During the quarantine period, my wife betrayed my trust by being unfaithful. However, I refuse to let this act destroy my existence. I believe it's important to provide some background leading up to the infidelity, not just for your understanding, but for my own healing. Writing serves as a crucial therapeutic outlet for me, and I find myself needing more trauma therapy than ever before. Please be patient with me as I share my story in detail. My intention here isn't to vilify my wife or place all the blame solely on her shoulders. Instead, I aim to present a balanced perspective by acknowledging my own mistakes while objectively recounting her actions, rather than judging her character. This process is difficult because, as I write, I feel a deep sense of guilt that I may be partly to blame, and in some instances, I am. Nevertheless, every situation has multiple viewpoints. To provide some context, I have a 14-year-old daughter from a previous marriage that ended disastrously. In short, my ex-wife was not a supportive person, and I had to take measures to ensure my daughter's safety. I was granted full custody after my ex-wife abruptly relocated from Texas to a European country, leaving my 4-year-old daughter behind. This move was traumatic for both of us, but I fought hard to maintain some connection between my daughter and her biological mother. I arranged virtual dates through phone and video calls as technology became more accessible. While her mother was not consistently present for our daughter, it wasn't entirely like her absence in the lives of her 2 other sons from previous relationships, where there had been no contact for 12 and 16 years, respectively. Given these circumstances, I was relieved to move forward with my life. It took about 3 years, but I eventually met an incredible woman whom I believed could potentially step into a maternal role for my daughter. This woman became my wife 2 years later. I have a tendency to see the best in people despite their imperfections, and considering my own numerous flaws, I felt I had no right to judge others harshly. I sought a partner who could appreciate my positive qualities and not be bothered by minor issues. I recognized my wife's true self and fell deeply in love with her. She is the most diligent person I have ever known. Our relationship initially faced challenges, especially in blending our families, as my daughter's biological mother was becoming increasingly distant. She stopped providing child support and ceased participating in virtual dates, placing me in a difficult position between a 7-year-old girl who couldn't comprehend her mother's absence and a woman I was growing to love. Over the next 3 years, the relationship was extremely intense, and I struggled to manage the associated stress. My soon-to-be wife frequently criticized my parenting, pointing out all the ways I was failing to raise my daughter on my own, despite my best efforts. During this time, my father faced his own hardships. He lost his wife to lung cancer, my stepmother, who had been like a second mother to me, and my father himself was diagnosed with emphysema. He lost his home and had to move in with me, leaving our household consisting of myself, my new wife, our newborn baby boy, and my daughter from the previous marriage. To cope with the immense stress, I resorted to 2 main methods: overeating, a habit rooted in my childhood experiences of extreme poverty and scarcity of food, or becoming excessively loud and angry, often resorting to yelling. This anger became my most significant struggle, one that I work on diligently every day. There were days when I was perpetually angry, not only because I was caught between my new wife and daughter, but also due to the difficult dynamics with my father, who is not the easiest person to live with. My weight continued to increase as my anger grew from the overwhelming stress, eventually reaching a point where I would frequently yell at my preteen daughter. I became confrontational, saying hurtful things and unintentionally scaring her because I couldn't handle the pressure my wife placed me under regarding our child. In an attempt to manage the situation, I even temporarily asked my father to leave our home for a year. This decision left him homeless, living out of his car, and I feared every day that I might find him deceased in his vehicle, especially since he had no other place to go and was exposed to the harsh winter elements near our apartment. Recently, the relationship with my wife had become rocky for years, and at that point, we had a 2-year-old son and discovered she was pregnant with our youngest child. We began attending marriage counseling, and I also sought solo therapy. Just before Christmas 2019, the stress levels between us were extremely high. Our relationship was still strained, and over the past 3 years, our intimate life had dwindled to maybe 30 times, which is infrequent given the circumstances. Despite the ongoing stress, I felt that therapy was beneficial, helping me manage my anger, though it hadn't entirely disappeared. Around this time, our youngest son contracted the flu and was unable to stop vomiting, necessitating hospitalization. He wasn't discharged until nearly midnight on Christmas Eve. To add to the chaos, my wife also fell ill with the flu. We were both confined to a cramped, uncomfortable hospital couch, and my mother-in-law was also visiting, someone I despise, who also fell sick. Tensions were extraordinarily high. Despite everything happening, my wife managed to push all my buttons relentlessly. When we returned home, she kept accusing me of being unreliable in taking care of our son, even though I had insisted she go home and rest while I stayed in the hospital with our son, who had just turned 1. I confronted her about these baseless accusations, but she showed no remorse and continued to antagonize me. My mother-in-law then started criticizing me, insisting I needed to be on medication and acting as if I was solely to blame for everything. Privately, I managed to get my wife to acknowledge her actions that led to the argument, but when it came to defending me against her mother, she refused to support me. My mother-in-law's behavior was hypocritical to an extreme degree, and the entire situation was dire. However, this incident marked a turning point for my anger. Over the next 7 months, I managed to keep my anger mostly under control, transforming into a strong father figure and a loving husband. I was finally able to open up fully to my therapist about the repressed trauma from my past, revealing a childhood filled with sexual and physical abuse. I was sodomized by a family member, raped by children from the neighborhood, and molested by a man at a motel where we lived. Additionally, I endured physical abuse from a babysitter and even from my own mother. These revelations explained why I had been so angry, and I was making significant progress in my life. I felt proud to share my advancements and self-discoveries with my wife. During quarantine, my wife and I worked from home, which naturally heightened tensions over the past few months. She spent a significant amount of time away from the house, often being out for 4 or 5 days each week. Her outings included working out with our daycare provider, who is a friend, or socializing with co-workers. I initially believed that having some space was beneficial since we had been cooped up for so long, and I felt that our marriage was improving. We even began to have more intimate moments after heartfelt discussions about how our respective weights had affected her pleasure. This made sense to me because she had never been very sexual, likely due to her own past sexual traumas. I was in such a positive place that I was even writing a self-help article to share my insights with others who might need it. However, over the past few weeks, I started to become suspicious of my wife's frequent outings. Many things didn't add up. She began hiding her phone when I walked by, which was unlike her, and our conversations felt different. A week before our anniversary, she had plans to have dinner with a coworker. We both knew she kissed me goodnight sincerely, not just a quick, obligatory peck. However, her dinner ran late, and she sent a text saying she was going to play pool, adding affectionate emojis, which was out of character for her. This discrepancy raised my suspicions. By 12:30 a.m., she should have been home around 9:10 p.m. But I hadn't heard from her. After putting both of our sons to bed, I stayed awake, deeply worried because she wasn't responding to any of my messages. I managed to log into her Google account and tracked her device, which indicated she was in a town 40 miles away from our home, far from where she claimed to be. I got into my car and drove to see if I could locate her vehicle. I arrived around 1 a.m. and found her car parked in front of an unfamiliar house. Around this time, my daughter texted me, asking where I was. I'm not sure what her conversation was about, but it felt like she knew more than she was letting on. I kept reassuring her that I was searching for her mother because it was uncharacteristic for her to be gone for so long. As we talked more, I grew increasingly suspicious that my daughter was withholding information. To mask my true concern, I pretended to be more panicked than I actually was, telling her I was going to call the police because I feared she might have been kidnapped or involved in an accident, even though I was right behind her vehicle. I paced around her car for about an hour, and by 2 a.m., she still hadn't come out. Her car used to have an alarm that would go off if the door was opened, but I remembered that we had gotten it fixed, so no alarm sounded. I hoped she would come out on her own, sparing me from having to knock on a stranger's door. The car's interior light came on, and I saw her youth baseball bat sitting upright. At this point, I was nearly certain she was being unfaithful, but a part of me still held on to hope. I grabbed the bat and continued pacing back and forth for another hour. My daughter was unusually worried about why I was searching for her mother, feeling like she was protecting her, and kept telling me I was overreacting. The more she insisted, the more I feigned panic. Eventually, she admitted that her mother was out with a man and provided me with his address. It turned out that my wife had previously informed our daughter that she was spending time with a man she met on a dating app, but neither of them had informed me. My heart sank as I approached the address she gave me. My daughter tried to convince me that they were just friends, but her behavior suggested otherwise. I explained to her that my wife doesn't usually dress up to go out drinking with someone she claims to just be friends with. As I was pacing, I saw a half-naked man moving back and forth outside the house. For my protection, I decided to take the bat with me, not knowing what I was about to encounter and concerned for my safety. A young man, likely in his late 20s, answered the door. I told him that my wife was inside and that I needed to speak with her. He feigned ignorance and confusion, but when he saw the bat, he became visibly concerned for his safety. Understanding how this might appear, I explained that I was genuinely worried and that I wasn't intending to be aggressive, I was simply protecting myself. He believed me and suggested that maybe my wife was in his roommate's room. He mentioned that I didn't need the bat because he was quite slender, but I refused to let go of it. He allowed me into the house and pointed me toward his roommate's bedroom. I attempted to open the door, but it was locked, deepening my sense of despair, confusion, and fear. Turning around, I looked at the roommate, who seemed to understand what I was thinking, even though I was completely clueless about his thoughts. He advised me not to proceed, triggering a surge of adrenaline within me. In a swift, almost instinctual reaction, I kicked the door open and saw my wife lying naked in bed with another man. For a brief moment, it felt surreal, like a nightmare becoming reality. My anger flared up again, but this time it was different. It was more of a fear-driven yelling, questioning why she was there. The man was a complete jerk, standing up while holding himself inappropriately, smirking, and making derogatory comments. I restrained myself from reacting violently, as I am not physically aggressive by nature. However, I tightly gripped the bat as the man exited the room. My wife continued to shout at me, even demanding that I leave the house so she could get dressed. I couldn't comprehend how our conversation was unfolding, but I reluctantly stepped outside to prompt her to leave, knowing she wouldn't budge if I didn't make the first move. Standing at the front door, I watched as the man walked into his garage, which was visible through a window from the patio. Then, I saw my wife walk out fully dressed, hug him, and apologize for my actions, showing no awareness of the turmoil I was experiencing. My blood boiled as I yelled at her for her behavior. We had minimal conversation outside, and I struggled to keep myself from vomiting in public. I felt utterly ill, while my wife showed no concern for my emotions. This was the mother of my 3 children, the woman I had vowed to spend my life with and whom I loved deeply. Instead of the affectionate wife who had kissed me goodnight and professed her love, I saw hatred and disgust in her demeanor. I'm adept at reading people, especially my wife and daughter, but I didn't perceive any of those negative emotions before. We drove home in separate cars, and my daughter ceased responding to me, running away due to her fear of my past anger issues. She hid at a local park until my wife returned, making the 40-minute drive home the longest and most emotionally draining of my life. I arrived home feeling devastated, confused, and angry, desperately searching for my child to ensure her safety. This is when my wife came home, and my daughter emerged from hiding. I attempted to speak to my wife calmly and respectfully, but she was uninterested, tired from a work night with only 2 hours left before she needed to be online for work. It was at this point that my daughter informed me she wanted to live with my wife and have no further contact with me, stating she would only visit out of obligation. This was another heavy blow, leaving me unable to breathe, sleep, or eat. For 7 days, I didn't consume any food, resulting in a loss of 17 pounds. The mere scent of food made me nauseous. I managed to get my wife to talk briefly, during which she revealed her plan to legally adopt my daughter with the intention of forming a family and then divorcing me to take her away. I later discovered that my daughter had been texting my wife, attempting to record a phone conversation I had with her about finding my wife in bed with another man. This meant I was being manipulated and used against me in court. I felt utterly betrayed. The past week and a half have been incredibly difficult. I drove back to my hometown to be with my 3 children and family during this challenging period, and I learned a lot from my daughter. I discovered that my wife had been speaking ill of me to her for some time, mocking my body image issues, and sharing text conversations with the man she was involved with. Both of them referred to me as insane and crazy, making it seem like I was the one at fault. It's unimaginable how someone can involve a child in such an adult situation, especially one as intelligent and mature as my daughter is. She's still young and doesn't fully grasp what's happening, only seeing one side of the story. My wife and daughter have grown close because my wife has been spending our money on things like Starbucks to bond with her. It wasn't about the money but about the quality time they spent together. Whenever I wanted to spend money, I was always told we were financially strained, yet my wife somehow managed to purchase things on Amazon. I feel that my daughter has every right to be upset with me for the pain I've caused her, but I believe it has been exacerbated by her shared experiences with my wife, who has been bad-mouthing me. If my daughter was already moderately unhappy with me, the conversations with my wife have pushed her to the brink of complete distress. She even confessed to encouraging my wife to seek male companionship. While I acknowledge that my anger has been a significant issue throughout my daughter's life, I believe the treatment I've been receiving from my wife and daughter is unwarranted. Anyone who knows me can attest to how much I love my children and how far I would go for them. Now, my wife and daughter are attempting to include her non-biological daughter in our divorce decree, wanting to make it official. I am left feeling lost, confused, angry, lonely, hurt, and utterly bewildered. I am unsure how this story will be received, anticipating that some will criticize my anger and actions while others will be as shocked as I am. I had hoped that writing this out would provide some relief, but instead, I feel like a complete mess. The person I need the most to help me through this is the one who now despises me, and I have no friends in this state to turn to for support. This pain is profound. We are amicably divorcing, and I have had to set aside my pride and suppress my anguish for the sake of our children. If I cause my wife pain as I am hurting, it would only harm our children, which is unacceptable. Update 1 ***. Monday was exceptionally tough for my therapy sessions. I decided to be completely vulnerable, sharing my story with the world. In most other situations, none of these events would have affected me so deeply, but recent developments left me breathless, unable to think clearly, and unable to erase the disturbing images from my mind. I was overwhelmed with emotions and fear, making it essential to distance myself both emotionally and financially from my soon-to-be ex-wife. She always gave me the impression that I couldn't manage finances on my own, insisting that I leave my paychecks in her account until we officially separated. I couldn't continue like that. I needed to separate everything immediately. As an adult and a competent business professional, I knew I could handle my finances, despite being human and prone to mistakes, especially given the current turmoil. In the process, I mistakenly provided the wrong account number for my direct deposits, using my actual account number instead of the required MICA number, a digital barcode. This error caused all my funds to be rejected, leaving me to wait for paper checks while my house payment was late. Early Monday, I had a doctor's appointment for reasons unrelated to depression, but I felt compelled to note depression as a secondary reason for my visit. My doctor was exceptional. She listened attentively, showed compassion and empathy, and helped me, but she was concerned about intrusive images of self-harm that were haunting my mind. I couldn't understand where these images originated or why they were suddenly appearing. I don't believe I have any desire or intent behind them. They were intrusive suggestions in my mind. Every time I closed my eyes or blinked, these images became more vivid. They started as visions of me driving my car off a local dam and escalated to scenes of me grabbing razor blades from my drawer. The phrase, "up the tracks, not across the tracks," echoed in my head like a 1950s showroom melody. I had already identified the issue with my bank account, so there was no reason to visit the bank, but I couldn't bring myself to go home either. Feeling trapped, I drove to an old Little League baseball field where I grew up, parked in the lot, and tried to make sense of why my direct deposits were being rejected. With 3 of them being declined, I went to my bank at 9 a.m., only to find it wouldn't open until 10 a.m. I had music playing, but every time I closed my eyes, the distressing images intensified, shifting from driving my car off the dam to reaching for razor blades in my home. The unsettling phrase continued to play in my mind. I realized there was no reason to visit the bank, yet I couldn't drive home either. In a state of panic, I called my therapist's office seeking someone to talk to. The young woman who answered the phone was unprepared for the depth of my crisis. I explained my urgent need to speak with someone, emphasizing the importance of immediate support. She opened my chart and informed me that my therapist was on vacation for the next week. I reiterated the necessity of talking to someone, but she suggested canceling all my appointments and assigning me a new one, which wasn't a solution. I tried calling back but was met with another unhelpful response. Desperate, I attempted to speak with a manager, but it seemed they were all working from home, making immediate assistance impossible. She promised a manager would call me, but I detailed the intrusive images I was experiencing, and although she showed sincere concern, she couldn't provide help. I remained in the parking lot, terrified and unsure of my next steps, until I received a call from my therapist's office. The girl named Morgan knew exactly what to do. She showed genuine care and took decisive action by contacting the police to perform a wellness check on me. I informed her that I was on my way home, needing to return my rental car. Sidebar***. I was driving a rental car after discovering my wife's infidelity. My family urged me to return to Las Vegas so they could support me, suggesting I bring my daughter along. My wife suggested I take my 2 boys as well. A day before my planned departure, my car broke down due to multiple mechanical issues, including bad engine mounts, a faulty water pump, a broken fuse box, and bad spark plugs. Desperate to get to Vegas, I contacted my insurance company, User. Being a veteran, I was assisted by a Marine representative who was very helpful and informed me that my insurance would cover the rental for mechanical reasons. However, upon arriving in Vegas, I was told they wouldn't cover the rental, despite having already paid $622 and a $200 deposit. Continuation of update 1 ***. The girl from the therapist's office was incredibly kind and attentive, which brought me to tears as I recounted my story. While driving, I found myself sobbing during certain parts of the conversation. She remained on the phone the entire time, and I told her I had reached home. I had been on speakerphone, so my wife could hear parts of our conversation. After thanking her, I hung up, placing my head in my hands and sobbing quietly. Despite everything, I don't see my wife as a monster. What she did was horrific, and she is aware of it, but she still has empathy, compassion, and love for me. She struggles to express it, often appearing robotic due to her own childhood and life challenges. She recognized that I was not okay and came over to comfort me, asking if I wanted to hold her. I nodded, avoiding eye contact, not wanting her to see my tears. I buried my head in her chest, feeling her tight grip around my back as she rubbed my shoulders and told me to breathe. I cried even harder, appreciating her attempt to console me, but it felt mechanical and failed to fill the void in my heart. Suddenly, there was a loud knock on the door. She asked what it was, and I informed her it was the police. She was confused and concerned, so she went to answer the door. The officers explained in more detail why they were there. 2 officers entered my bedroom. They were remarkable. The female officer, who did most of the talking, instantly related to my daughter and my story because her own father had committed suicide in prison. She shared her feelings of emptiness caused by that loss. The male officer noticed my USMC leg tattoo and, being a Marine himself, began conversing with me in a way that made me feel understood. They were initially dispatched for someone else, but upon recognizing my distress, they offered their support. Before they left, I finally called my wife to inform her that I was okay and that I was going away for a while, instructing her to come pick up the rental car. She arrived with a mutual friend and informed my entire family that I was all right. Seeing her with our friend, I broke down completely, unable to face her physically. I couldn't bring myself to show her my broken state. Both our friend and my wife were standing in the parking lot, but a deputy prevented them from approaching me. I slid behind a pillar and wept uncontrollably. The deputy asked if it was okay for my friend to come over, and I nodded yes. As my friend approached, my emotions overwhelmed me further, and I couldn't stop crying. She gently held me, and I broke down even more. She comforted me, holding me up and allowing me to cry, sensing my distress. My friend asked if I wanted my wife to come over, and I longed for her presence more than anything. I had sacrificed so much to become a better person for her, but it felt like everything was falling apart. I nodded in agreement, still struggling to face her, feeling like a child unwilling to confront a parent in trouble. The deputies offered to accompany us to a room for safety, showing incredible protectiveness. My friend told my wife angrily not to speak to me and just hold me. We moved into a nearby room where I held her and cried some more, unable to control my emotions. I had never cried like this before. I'm usually sensitive and emotionally open, but not a crier, and I felt embarrassed by my vulnerability. After some time, we said our goodbyes, and I handed her the rental keys. The police then escorted me to the back of their car and drove me to the hospital to speak with a crisis worker. I received some surprisingly good food at the hospital, and the nurses were amazing. They noticed my mask and asked about it, learning that I had bought it on Amazon. They listened to parts of my story, and we even shared a laugh over a drunken man singing 2 Tickets to Paradise. I felt a bit better after a lengthy conversation with the crisis worker, and we agreed to create a safety plan. We identified my triggers and devised strategies to handle those difficult moments. Since I arrived voluntarily, we decided I could leave, so I began staying with friends from Monday night onward, distancing myself from my wife. I couldn't understand why I was having such a rough day, but I believe it was due to the accumulation of financial troubles and watching my wife rapidly move on with her life. She continued to communicate with the man she cheated with, expressing her liking for him because he was the opposite of me. She was even asking our neighbors on social media for items like TVs and printers for projects related to this new man. This situation made the past 7 years feel meaningless, and I was overwhelmed by it all. Despite these challenges, I'm gradually improving. I obtain medication to help me sleep, which blocks out the disturbing images I see when I close my eyes at night, images of my wife's naked body next to another man, her kissing me goodbye, and the text about playing pool with a friend. I needed to suppress her anger and hatred, to make her feel the pain I was enduring. Update 2 It's been over a year since I last posted an update, and I didn't think I'd share again because, honestly, who cares about my life story? I didn't believe my experience was unique compared to the countless others people share. However, I've been receiving numerous messages from people offering their condolences and seeking updates. My story even became a YouTube video, which was unexpected. What's fascinating is that through these comments on platforms like Reddit and social media, I've noticed how different people react and form opinions about my situation, my soon-to-be ex-wife, and even my daughter. Some comments were quite extreme. We all read countless stories daily, and I've always wondered about the reality behind those narratives and how people's perceptions differ from the actual experiences of those living them. It's been strange to encounter people who think they understand my life better than I do, without having lived it. I've made mistakes, absolutely, and I'll continue to make them, but I strive to learn from each one, just as I try to be honest with myself and those who listen to my story. Throughout my life, I've been accused of exaggerating or lying, and I understand why. I'm very detailed and descriptive. When my brain processes a traumatic event, I become a completely different person. Time seems to slow down, allowing me to remember minute details. There was a similar situation during my time in the Marines when I was attacked by a fellow Marine and his wife. I recounted the story to my staff sergeant, who dismissed me as a liar even though everyone else appreciated the account. But I digress. I promise to share my truth to the best of my ability, and if you don't believe it or don't like it, that's okay. As the title suggests, my wife got arrested for domestic violence against me. Just a disclaimer, if you're new to my stories, I'm a writer, not a published author, but someone who shares long narratives. I apologize in advance if this is too much for some. So, where should I begin? Perhaps the best place is to start by saying that I'm doing okay, not great, but not horrible either. I've experienced many ups and downs since everything began. I also want to give anonymous shout-outs to my friends and family who have supported me over the past year. I express my gratitude to them every day, but I feel it needs to be said here. The immense patience, love, understanding, and sympathy they've shown me have been overwhelming, and I thank them. To those Redditors who have followed my journey and reached out with condolences, I appreciate you as well. Let's begin. My ex-wife moved out of our home relatively quickly after the scandal, almost a month after I caught her cheating, and about 2 weeks after her arrest. She moved back to the apartment we previously shared to start her life anew with me. I helped her move into her new place, primarily because I feared the man she cheated with might come to our house to help relocate her belongings. Additionally, I wanted her out as quickly as possible to begin my healing process. I won't provide many updates on her current situation, as there's not much to report. Her life right now is similar to anyone else's. She works tirelessly and pays for an overpriced living space. I decided to keep the house we were renting, fearing that I might not be able to afford the rent on a single income since we both earned comparable salaries. To my surprise, I discovered that not only could I cover all my bills, but I also had some discretionary income. This was both surprising and uncomfortable, given how financially tight we had been for so long. I realized part of the reason was that I no longer had to manage her debts. Additionally, I reorganized my own debts, and I learned that she was not adept at handling finances. The next part is crucial to my story, and I hope it helps those who need it. After the cheating incident, I spent a lot of time with my therapist. He was relatively new to me and the first male therapist I had ever worked with. Society often teaches men that their feelings are irrelevant, emphasizing that women, children, and pets receive unconditional love, while men are only loved if they provide. This societal expectation contributes to the fact that men have 3 times higher suicide rates than women. Few people ask us how we're truly doing, and when we do share our feelings, it's often dismissed. That's why I decided to switch to a male therapist. My previous therapist suggested this would be beneficial, despite my discomfort with the idea, as I had always chosen female therapists to feel safe being vulnerable. However, they didn't seem equipped to handle the level of emotional honesty I was presenting. My new male therapist forced me out of my comfort zone, leading to genuine personal growth. I was fortunate because he was an excellent therapist. Shortly after my breakdown, he met me in person, defying COVID protocols, and offered me a hug, something I had never done before, even with my own father. I didn't realize how much I needed that level of compassion. Here are some of the ups and downs I mentioned earlier. My previous therapist retired shortly after, and I have yet to find a suitable replacement. I now have a new female therapist whom I adore, but she is fully booked, making it difficult to build a strong therapeutic bond. I've invested a significant amount of time and money into creating a peaceful environment and focusing on self-care. Unfortunately, I've been spending an excessive amount of time in my room, 8 hours for sleep and 8 hours for work, leaving me too exhausted to engage in other activities. To combat this, I took an idea from TikTok and transformed my ceiling by creating cloud-like formations. This took about a month of intermittent work. I'm not particularly handy or a DIY enthusiast, so I made some minor mistakes, but I genuinely love the result. I installed Bluetooth LED lights, an essential oils diffuser with Bluetooth capabilities, a premium sound Amazon Echo, and connected them all. I programmed the LED lights to simulate lightning while the speakers play thunder sounds, and I use a rain-scented oil in the diffuser. Additionally, I purchased a 50-inch Amazon Fire Stick TV for my meditation sessions. I discovered a YouTube channel called Meditative Mind, which offers relaxing visuals and sounds. I'm also in the process of building a smart mirror, tweaking it by adding a touchscreen sensor to the frame and integrating Alexa with blue LED lights that activate upon hearing the wake word. My goal was to explore new activities that I don't usually engage in, and I've been enjoying the process. Update 3, dating and moving on. The relationship with my kids and the divorce process is progressing relatively well. My young boys are adapting to the separation quite smoothly. They are currently in their daddy's boys phases, eager to spend all their time with me, though I anticipate that in a few months, they might shift back to preferring their mother. My daughter is also coping, despite facing a lot of negative comments online. I kindly ask that these criticisms stop, as she was placed in an impossible situation, and no one here, not even me, has walked in her shoes. Both my daughter and I have grown tremendously as father and daughter, and I am immensely proud of her. We are both receiving the help we need, and she is truly a remarkable kid. Regarding the divorce, my wife and I have agreed to approach it amicably. It's challenging for me not to resent her, but doing so wouldn't benefit our situation or our children. The best outcome for our kids is to have two successful parents rather than two parents who despise and fight with each other constantly. My wife and I don't get along well, but we are both making efforts to manage. I might argue that she still acts like a bitch occasionally without any valid reason, complicating things further. Our amicable divorce process has had its ups and downs. Initially, we agreed to split the costs 50-50, but she reached a point where she didn't want to contribute, causing delays in the process. Once we began attending mediation appointments and started paying, things moved forward quickly. However, she became upset over trivial matters and paused the process, even threatening to take me to court because I refused to take her to Disneyland using tickets I had purchased with an accident settlement from when we were together. The idea of the kids going to Disneyland in California, the constant walking, and the presence of two adults who don't get along did not bode well for a harmonious situation. Consequently, I chose to take the kids and my father with me. She was so upset that she wouldn't discuss her concerns and simply put the divorce on hold for months without any communication. Eventually, we resumed conversations and agreed to proceed with the divorce. Unfortunately, our legal assistant suddenly passed away from a brain aneurysm. We obtained a new legal assistant who took over her caseload, and the divorce should be finalized any day now. The final paperwork was sent to the courts, and once we receive it signed by the judge, the process will be complete. Update 4, dating Against the advice of almost everyone around me, I joined a dating app. I felt the need to have someone to talk to, flirt with, and maybe find someone who genuinely enjoyed my company. As you might expect, it hasn't gone well. I've only progressed beyond the first date with someone once. I was very honest with these women, disclosing that I was still married and going through a recent divorce, which clearly raised red flags for them. They understood, but they didn't realize that despite these issues, I am still the same person they enjoyed talking to and agreed to meet. They likely avoided potential drama, which is perfectly understandable. One particularly hurtful thing I heard from a couple of women was their fear of having to raise my kids if they got involved with me, dealing with the associated baby mama drama. I've been a father for 17 years and have never required anyone else to raise my children. Then, I met a woman who initially showed interest in my profile. When I viewed hers, I was struck by how absolutely stunning she was, fit, a marathon runner, sweet, kind, everything one could want. Facebook dating lets you know if you have mutual friends, and we discovered we had 3 in common. This shared connection made everything between us incredibly easy. She inquired about me with our mutual friends, and I did the same, with everyone praising our potential connection. We felt an instant bond. She knew all the perfect things to say, likely because she was a social worker, which helped me lower my defenses. For the first time in my life, I felt genuinely special and cared for. She worked at one of the hospitals where I was employed, and after a few days of talking, she asked if I would bring her coffee so we could meet in person. I agreed, and she paid for the coffee. I picked it up and brought it to her, and we talked in my car for about 20 minutes. She then asked if I wanted to kiss her, and since she was gorgeous, I said yes. Things were progressing so well that we were planning trips together. She got accepted to run the Chicago Marathon, so we booked flights and thoroughly enjoyed each other's company. However, something changed. Her father fell ill with cancer again, and her entire personality shifted. I felt her pulling away gradually. One evening, we were supposed to spend time together, but she never responded to my texts. She mentioned taking a nap on the couch, but I sensed something was wrong. I asked to speak with her on the phone, and she declined. I requested to come over and see her, but she refused, effectively ending our relationship through text. She didn't allow me to retrieve the belongings I had left at her place. They were likely still there or in the trash, and we haven't seen each other since. She had decided not to go to Chicago with me and asked if I could switch her flight tickets to change her seat so she could travel with one of her girlfriends. Given that airline hold times are typically around 1 to 2 hours, I told her I didn't feel comfortable making the change, but assured her she could handle it herself. This decision angered her, and she didn't say another word. Later that day, she sent an email confirming that changes had been made to the flight, and I haven't heard from her since. She had often spoken about her sister being bipolar and her father's anger issues. As I reflect on our relationship, I almost wonder if she herself struggles with bipolar disorder and anger management. Update 5, my job ***. Amidst all this trauma from my soon-to-be ex-wife, the halted divorce process, and my ex-girlfriend's actions against me, I found out in August that I was being laid off from work. This was the third round of layoffs at my company. I had felt relatively secure because our team was the only one allowed to hire new employees, given the substantial workload that needed attention. In my specific role, I was the sole person providing support for over 50 employees. However, even I wasn't immune to the layoffs. They required me to train my replacement and provided me with a severance package. I loved this job and the company I worked for, but it was monotonous. There wasn't much for me to do as long as the system was functioning correctly, and no additional support was needed. I was bored but content and loyal. The saying, when one door closes, another opens, proved true. I began searching for a new job and secured a position at an outstanding company that was like a golden ticket on my resume. I doubled my salary and was able to genuinely focus on my self-care. I bought a new bicycle for trail rides and purchased a 2021 Subaru WRX STI, which had been my dream car. I also engaged in volunteer work and other activities to try new things. I signed my oldest son up for T-ball earlier this year and ended up coaching his team. I absolutely loved baseball and was quite the athlete in my youth, so coaching for the first time was exhilarating. The reception from the kids and their parents was fantastic, and I signed up again for next year. My youngest son will be playing his first year, and he's extremely excited, so much so that he eagerly asks me if I'll coach him next year, even knocking on the bathroom door to ask. One of the mothers even asked me out, although I didn't feel a romantic connection with her. My therapist had suggested, before retiring, a program called SPRO-S-ketamine, which is essentially microdosed ketamine, typically used for individuals who haven't responded to traditional antidepressants. My experience with it has been life-changing, and I highly recommend it to anyone interested. You do experience hallucinations with your eyes closed, but I found that listening to music by carbon-based life forms or similar artists, along with haptic feedback headphones like the Razer Nari, can greatly enhance the experience. Despite my struggles, I feel much better than I did before. I genuinely believe it saved my life. I'm calmer, more level-headed, happier, and more focused. You can visit SPRO's website to find local offices that offer this treatment. They typically require you to have tried 3 different types of antidepressants before they consider using ketamine. You can claim you've tried 3 types to qualify. MindBloom is a website where you can get it sent to your house, but I recommend the office route over the website option, especially if your insurance will cover it, as it will be more cost-effective. Other activities, as you can see, I enjoy writing immensely. I'm currently working on about 11 books and short stories, along with 1 article about mental health. They all exist within the same universe I've created, except for the article and short story. Most of my work includes graphic novels and children's books, 5 science fiction books, 5 children's books, 3 comedy books, 1 horror book, 1 short story, and 1 article. To summarize, I'm still in pain, but it could be much worse. I'm convinced that I might be alone forever, partly because it's incredibly challenging for a single father with young children to find a woman willing to integrate into a large family, and partly because I feel like such a broken mess that I can't commit to anyone. My depression is so severe that it's affecting my weight significantly. I did make an appointment with a doctor to address the weight issues and exhaustion I've been experiencing. I lost my job but found an even better one. My divorce should be finalized any day now. This process is undoubtedly something that cannot be overcome quickly. I attended divorce care meetings, and one statement that resonated deeply was, when you are single, you are whole. Your spirit is complete. When you meet someone and fall in love, you start a family, and your 2 souls merge into one larger soul. But when you go through a traumatic divorce, your soul is literally torn in half, and it takes time to become whole again. This was the most profound summary I've heard to explain the pain of divorce.